Hey everybody, I hope you are well today. We are going to be doing a new art project and we are going to be tying our cursive writing lessons in with a painting. And the painting type is a landscape. A landscape is when the subject of the artwork is all about the land. Sometimes there can be other things. You could have trees or small buildings, but the focus is that you're showing the land. And one of the things that we're going to do today in the first lesson is we're going to make the sky. And our landscape is particularly going to be a sunset landscape. And so I'm going to show you different tools that you may have available to you at home, some watercolor tools, so that you have different skills to make that landscape happen, no matter what you have at home. Whether it's paints that you squeeze out of a tube like this, whether it is a type of watercolor cake set like this where they're dry and you add water, or even I have a whole other lesson on this if you want to use watercolor pencils. So there are lots of options. I'm going to show you what I'm using today, and I will show you all of the steps in each video one by one for you to make your own cursive art watercolor landscape. Let's get started. Here's an example of the watercolor landscape cursive project we're going to make. You can see that the bottom is a landscape. We've got a sunset sky behind it, and we have a banner floating in the sky with a cursive word on it. My word is nature. You'll get to choose a word that you want to put on your own banner. Before I can ask you to make a landscape artwork today, you need to know what it is. So let's talk about that first. Here is an example of Vincent van Gogh, example of landscape. And this is a really good example of landscape because landscapes show mountains, valleys, trees, rivers, forests, lakes, deserts, and all kinds of different parts of land. The rule about it is that the land is the focus. It is usually a very wide view. This one is not a very wide view because we can really see a lot of things up close. But it is usually a wide view. It can include other things, like maybe some people or some houses or buildings, and we'll see some examples like that. However, the land is the main component. Sky is almost always included in a landscape, and weather is an important part of the composition. Let's look at a few other examples. This one has some more details, so we can see that it's Vincent van Gogh's painting. It's called Landscape with Olive Trees, and it's from the year 1889. You can see that we've got a lot of weather and interesting sky happening here, a lot of clouds and movement. We have a background, so we can see that the mountains in the distance are bluish, and that's our background. We have a middle ground as well, and that includes the big tree and to the right. It includes some small bushes and rolling hills, and then it starts to include these shrubs to the left. And then our foreground starts to include this grassy area, and then right up in front to the right we have an area of land that's a lot closer to us. So we've got our foreground, our middle ground, and our background, and that's an important part of landscape arrangement. This is another really interesting example. This one we have from a very long time ago. It's from the year 1072, and it's called Early Spring by the artist Gyoji. And we can see that landscape is totally thought of in a different way here. We've got lots of layers happening. Indeed, it has a foreground, middle ground, and background, but these clouds seem to be holding different parts of land, and it's thought of in a completely different way. So we have lots of perspectives happening within one artwork, which we also say a composition. So this is a really important early influential landscape painting. Let's look at the next one. This is by Peter Bruegel, the Elder. It's called The Hunters in the Snow from 1565. He was one of the leading artists of the Northern Renaissance, and his painting, The Hunters in the Snow, was part of a series dedicated to showing these different times of the year. So I want you to think for a second, what season is the artist showing here? If you said winter, you're correct. What is happening in this picture? I want you to look at all the parts. And remember, I said sometimes people and buildings and structures are part of a landscape, but remember the overall bits show a big sky, shows a wide perspective, shows the land, right? We can see those mountains in the distance. We can see foreground, middle ground, background. So we've got that same structure. We can see these hunters and they have their dogs ready to help them hunt. We can also see what looks like people ice skating in the background. Lots of things happening there. Great example of landscape. Here is another one. This is called The Hay Wain. It's by John Constable from 1821. And John Constable was a British painter. So what part of the world does that mean he was from? It's from Europe, and specifically from England. He did not want his paintings to look idealized or perfect, like a lot of painters at the time did. He wanted to have really realistic images of what he thought the natural world looked like. And he loved to paint this area of land that his father had owned and where he grew up, which is what this is showing. Again, try to find the foreground, which is the land closest to us, the middle ground, which is the land sort of a little bit farther away, and then the background, which is the land that's much farther away. Do you notice the weather and the sky? Think about that term landscape and what all the things that it incorporates. Here's another really good example. This is by Thomas Cole, and it's called View from Mount Holyoke, Northampton, Massachusetts, after a thunderstorm, the Oxbrow, and it's from 1836. He loved to capture the American landscape, and he started a very famous painting school in New York State called the Hudson River School. In this painting, you can see this sweeping expanse of the sky after a storm, and you can see the storm moving off on this side. We've got our foreground, our middle ground, and our background, and we've got this big old sky. Good example. Here's another one, and this is a picture from something that would have been what everyone said out west, right? In the United States on the western frontier. This person, Albert Bierstadt, was from Germany, and he's known for really large paintings. But lots of people in America never got to go out and see that part of the United States. So these paintings were really important because they traveled back to the eastern side, and it was the only way a lot of people got to see that part of the country. It's from 1865. We're showing a view from Yosemite Valley, California, and you can see all these different wonderful parts of this magnificent landscape. And then here's another much different example. This is by Claude Monet. It's called Impression Sunrise from 1872. And this painting caused quite a stir because people were not used to artists painting this way. And they sometimes said it was only an impression and not a real artwork. But the word caught on, and then many artists started to work in this way. You can see lots of brush strokes, and you can see how the light reflects on the water. What part of this painting draws you in the most? Where are your eyes drawn? And where do we see our landscape? Where do we see our sky? Can you make out the sky? Can you make out the land? It's a waterscape in a bit of a way too, isn't it? So these are lots of good examples of landscape, and we're going to make our own today.